Hello, everyone. I think we are hopefully live. I am just kind of going to spend the first minute or two just testing video and making sure everyone can hear us okay. Awesome. We've got a thumbs up from Mia, sounding good. Okay, perfect. In which case, yeah, nice to meet you all, albeit virtually. Hopefully, we're going to have a few people joining us today for a cook-along. So close that, make sure everything's set and prepared. I've just been getting the studio ready, but yeah, hopefully everything's set and ready. So just to introduce myself, my name is Ollie. I run a food blog and a cookery account on on Instagram called OT Cooks and Eats, where I love showcasing lots of new recipes and delicious ingredients and dishes to try. And I've been partnering with Hearts SU for the last, I think coming on, last few months certainly, to provide some cooking content. So this is the first of our kind of YouTube live series. We've done some sessions on Instagram before now. Again, a really lovely kind of variety of dishes. So we've done tagine, we've done a kind of nice sort of poached chicken and rice dish. We've done, what else? We've done a nice kind of prawn and tomato linguine. So a really nice kind of variation of dishes. Hopefully aimed at kind of giving you students and members of the SU some good kind of recipes to take away and try yourselves. Today we are live, so apologies if there's any kind of unexpected events. I suppose it's the beauty of live recordings. So please do send in your kind of questions and things like that if you have them. Yeah, hopefully you'll be kind of cooking along with us. So to let you know kind of what we're cooking, hopefully you know by now if you are joining in, but it's we're making salmon teriyaki today. So really nice kind of very classic sort of Anglo Asian dish. I think it's been, you know, popularized in the UK a lot, and very, very simple to do. So I'll talk you through the ingredients now. So we've obviously got our salmon. So you can use different cuts of salmon for this if you like. You could even do like a whole sort of side of salmon, would be really nice. We've just gone for salmon fillets today. So I've got 4 here. I'm cooking for my family this evening, so double pressure. But yeah, just got salmon fillets. They're quite kind of lean cut, I suppose, or the fat's certainly kind of marbled through. We're going to leave the skins on. They come, you know, with the skins on, and you can take them off, but I find if you cook it right, it goes really nice and crispy and kind of gives a nice sort of added textural element to the dish as well. In terms of what we serve that with, we've got some rice that I will talk you through in a moment. I've got my rice on, but I will talk you through the stages at which you would add that rice. And the greens that we're going to do it with are some asparagus, so kind of fine asparagus, and some tender stem broccoli as well. And then I guess the kind of part of the dish that really makes it sing, really makes it unique, is the marinade. So different kind of ways you can do this. Again, I don't know if this is necessarily a classic recipe, but it's quite easy and hopefully uses a lot of things that you might already have in the house. So that is made up of some soy sauce as the kind of predominant savoury flavour, savoury element to the dish. We've also got some kind of aromatics, if you like. So we've got some garlic, ginger, and chili that are going to give it a really nice sort of base note, hopefully make it quite fragrant as well. Similarly, we've got limes as well, and we're going to use the zest and juice of those to kind of maximize the flavor and give it a nice sort of pop of acidity. And then we've got some honey as well. So hopefully from those ingredients, you can start to imagine how it's going to be a nice kind of balanced sauce. We've got that kind of salty, savory hit from the soy, the nice kind of fragrance from the garlic and the ginger, a little bit of heat from the chili, the acidity from the lime, and then the sweetness from the honey. So kind of comes together to be a really nice sort of sauce on its own, really. So that's the kind of marinade sauce that we're going to be making to go with it. And essentially rice in the middle, salmon on top, sauce over the top of that with the asparagus and the broccoli. So I think that's just enough talking from me. As I say, if you are cooking along with us, please do drop any questions that you have in the chat. And at the end, I'll remind everyone to send us your pictures, because it'd be really nice to see if you have kind of joined in with us to see what we're making. Perfect. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. First thing we want to tackle are the kind of aromats, basically. So we are going to start by prepping the garlic, chili, and ginger. So the ginger, you can use a really cool trick that I'm going to hopefully find now. There you go. With the ginger, so you can see there that I've started by kind of peeling it with a knife. So you can do that, and it's certainly a kind of effective way. But what I find sometimes happens with that is that you lose a lot of the ginger in the peeling, so you don't necessarily get the full benefit of it. The way I prefer to do it is using a teaspoon. So I will try and come a little bit closer to the camera, but you can see there I'm just kind of scraping, if I can find the right angle, scraping the skin down like that, and you can see there that I'm just kind of peeling it off using my thumb to do it. So hopefully you can see that. And what that does is it helps to kind of peel the ginger at the same time, but just means that you don't necessarily waste as much of it. And also, if you've got a really big bit, you can maybe only peel half of it, and it will be absolutely absolutely fine. You can leave the skin on for the other half. So for this one, as I say, because I'm doing it for 4, I'm going to do pretty much this whole lump here. But yeah, you can sort of scale up or down accordingly. And similarly, if actually I really love ginger and I really want it to be a nice kind of fiery kick to the sauce, you can add more in as well. This is again a sort of guideline, I say, rather than something that you have to follow perfectly. So in terms of how we want to prep this, you can grate it, and I'd say that would kind of probably be the best way. The way I would recommend doing that is using one of these, like a microplane grater or a very, very fine grater to do it. And again, it's just very simple, kind of, minces it down for you almost. However, I'm conscious not everyone has one of these, so I'm going to show you a way to kind of chop it to get it really nice and fine as well. So get rid of that onto the boards. And then again, the reason we kind of are going to chop it is to try and get it really nice and fine. This is going to be kind of going throughout our marinade, so we don't want to necessarily have big chunks of ginger. So first things first is make sure you've got a nice kind of flat surface to chop on. So I know that ginger is not going anywhere now. And you just want to sort of finely slice that down into very thin slices. And what you can do then is hopefully sort of stack them on top of each other again. So again, can't necessarily see that from there. So I'll come up. You can see there that the ginger's kind of like thin slices that are stacked on top of each other. We're going to do exactly the same thing again. So slice them into matchsticks now. And again, just being very careful with your fingers. And again, it doesn't matter if they're not all absolutely perfect at this stage, because there's a secret weapon that we can use to help us with that. And then you've got nice kind of ginger matchsticks now. And all you want to do is sort of move those so they're all facing the same way. And then we're just going to chop across them to kind of cut in the 3rd dimension, if that makes sense. So go across and you get nice kind of finely diced ginger, which I will show you in a moment. As I say, you can use a grater if that's easier, or even like a food processor. You can put it in with a little bit of water just to help it go, a little bit faster, things like that. But yeah, we've got kind of nice, finely chopped ginger there that you can see. And the thing at this stage is that it is nice and finely chopped, but it's not all kind of perfect. It's certainly not as fine as that, grated ginger that we had before. That's not a problem. We'll come back to that, and I will show you what you can do to avoid that. So I'm just going to do the rest of this ginger very quickly now. And then we will move on to our garlic and chili. So it's a nice kind of, hopefully quite a low-key meal, this one. It's all in the one pan except for the rice. Yeah, minimal washing up, which is always nice. So just finish off these strips of ginger here, and then we can rattle through those. And again, if you can get it nice and fine at this stage, then brilliant. If not, not to worry. We've got another step that we can use that will help us in the end. So that's the ginger kind of mostly prepped. Now we're going to turn our attention to the garlic. So nice, easy way to get it out of its jacket is just to pop it on the board like that and use the knife, just being very careful that the blade's pointed down, and just pop it like that. And you should find that that makes the skin much easier to take off, much easier to peel out of its jacket. Then once you've got the jacket out, you can see that it's got that little kind of knobbly bit on the end. That's called the heel of the garlic, and we want to take that off. So again, just chop that off. And then, you know, again, very finely, just kind of slice this one. Just work your way along. The main thing when you're chopping things like these is just to make sure you've got a nice kind of confident grip with the knife and that your fingertips are tucked out the way. So again, not sure how well you can see on there, but I'm using something called the claw technique. So I'm holding the food like that, and it's making sure that my fingertips are always tucked in. So you can see there, if my fingertips were tucked out, then there's potential for the knife to go on them. Whereas by kind of keeping them in like that, I know there's no danger. So I can go a little bit faster and I feel a bit more kind of confident with the knife. So that's the way I'd kind of recommend doing it. It might be that you need to practice it a few times beforehand. That's fine. You know, it's certainly not a race when it comes to things like this. You want to make sure that you get that kind of confidence first, you know, good grip of the knife before you start going on to doing, you know, very fancy things. People like Gordon Ramsay and Jamie will do all this kind of fancy chopping. Completely not necessary. It's just that they've obviously been cooking for however many years, and you know, are very comfortable with using the knife. So again, take your time with these. Try and get them as thin as possible. And then once we've got that, we can put that with the ginger. So the reason why kind of haven't necessarily finished the ginger or the garlic at this stage will hopefully become clear in a moment. So again, stick that garlic along with the ginger there. And then finally, if I can see where it's disappeared to, there you go. We've got the chili. So red chilies are a bit of a weird one. They can be either super mild or super hot. So I would always recommend kind of trying a little bit first. It might seem a little bit odd, but just the very end bit of the chili. So just give it a little taste. So I can see that this one is actually quite mild from that. If you take a tiny little bit and you're like, whoa, yeah, that's hot, you know to kind of use a little bit less of it, basically. But for me, I'm going to use this whole chili, seeds and all as well. I kind of personally quite like the spice. If you, if you don't like the spice as much, then you can, you know, obviously leave that out. I will show you how to leave it out, actually. Obviously, I'll then add it back in. But for those that are watching that don't want it, I will show you how to leave it out. Got to have a quick sip of the coffee, making sure I'm caffeinated for the stream. So in terms of how to remove the seeds, again, we go to our trusty friend, the teaspoon, to help us out. Honestly, it was one of the best kitchen gadgets ever. But you want to take the stem off. So just below the stem there, you want to chop that, and then you can see it's just that kind of very top part that's removed. The next thing you want to do is slice the chili lengthways. So kind of going right through, and you can see you've got that kind of flesh and seeds inside for both halves. One of the things I think that people commonly get wrong is that they think that the seeds are the hot part of the chili. They are spicy, but from my experience, and unfortunately there is one too many experiences to draw on, the pith is the kind of the white part in the chili. Do you see this part here is where a lot of the heat is kept. So for me, I always, if I kind of don't necessarily want that heat, I'll use the teaspoon to remove it. So again, you can just see I'm going to kind of scrape the teaspoon, and it kind of gets it all out in one go. And again, I'm going to add that back in because I kind of want the seeds, but anyone else that didn't want them obviously can put that to the kind of rubbish pile. And again, exactly the same with the other side, just being careful that you don't get any in your eye. Last thing you want. And then how to kind of finely dice a chili. If you've ever done a pepper, very similar. I kind of like to chop it into long strips, very similar to what we did with the ginger. Chop it into long strips and then go across. So here you can see, again, I'm just using that kind of claw technique, chopping it into little kind of matchsticks there. So you can see at that point lots of nice sort of thin slithers of chili, and just do the same with the other half. Again, you'll notice I'm kind of like dragging my knife with this one. It just makes it a little bit easier to manage. You can obviously, you know, chop through, but I just personally find that a little bit easier way of doing it. And then again, we're just going to kind of chop across here exactly like we did with the ginger to create lots of nice kind of small cubes, very fine dice of red chili to go through our sauce. So finish that off. And again, don't worry at this stage if there are one or two bits that are slightly larger, because what we're going to do now is going to hopefully alleviate that. So you've got your aromats kind of nearly done there. So you can see the lovely kind of almost like holy trinity of a lot of Asian cooking: ginger, garlic, and chili. Make sure that they're all kind of in the middle of the board there. And what we're going to do now is something called the cross chop. So you may have seen it with herbs or, you know, a lot of other kind of different things in the kitchen. You know, some vegetables like onions, carrots, and celery. If you want to get them really fine, you'll see chefs doing a cross chop. Basically, all it is just a very kind of rough hack, but you do it quite fast to make things much, much smaller. So if I show you the board as it is at the moment, you can see there we've got these kind of like almost little chips of garlic. If I manage to avoid it going on the floor, we want to obviously make that nice and small. It's kind of going to go through our sauce, and rather than, you know, a big chunk of garlic halfway through. The way we do that is with your kind of dominant hand on the knife. You put the tip of your knife on the board. So I'll do it that way so you can see it a bit easier. Tip of the knife on the board, your non-chopping hand on top at 90 degrees. So make sure that you haven't got any kind of fingers curling around or anything like that. Nice kind of confident grip on the knife. And then you just want to go up and down, working your way through those ingredients. And then back and forth, basically, so you can see the angle of the knife is changing there. And then again, when you get more confident and more comfortable with the knife, you can speed up. And what you'll notice start to happen is that, again, it's not precise by any means. We're certainly not kind of chopping things, you know, for the final dish, but we're making it all the same size, nice and small. You'll notice that stuff kind of comes up onto the knife like that. So again, just being very careful, using your fingers to clean that off. And again, you'll also notice that it starts to spread across the board. So the way I like to do that is just to kind of drag those ingredients back to the middle. Again, you've got a nice tight square to work from there. So you can carry on. And then again, you just want to wrestle through this. The aim is to make it nice and small. Obviously, we want to try and replicate what we had with the grater for those that don't have one. Another thing I think just seems like a really redundant tool is a garlic crusher. I always kind of question why garlic crushers are used by so many people. You've got a perfectly good one here with the knife. You just need to know how to use it. So hopefully, with your newfound technique, we can avoid buying another piece of equipment. I know we're always about saving money as students. You want to use it to go out rather than with unnecessary kitchen gear. So that would be a top tip from me: is never ever buy a garlic crusher. Just buy a good knife. But you can see there now everything is much more kind of uniform and small. We've got no sort of big lumps there. That's absolutely fine. If you wanted to keep going and make it absolutely micro small, you can do. For me, that's probably kind of good enough. There's no sort of big chunks of garlic, ginger, or anything like that in there. So I am absolutely fine with that. And that's kind of going to be the basis of the sauce, really. So we're going to kind of cook that off now. we've added it all together as well. Sometimes you'll see things cook at slightly different rates. So often I'll say add garlic in later, certainly versus things like onions. I'd say onions get a bit of a head start because garlic, if it overcooks, can go kind of bitter and horrible. With these, we're just going to be kind of cooking it very, very quickly. So it's not necessarily a case of needing to add them in at different stages. So it's absolutely fine to kind of combine them all. And again, it's a nice sort of quick and easy way of doing things. So I'm going to get my pan on a kind of medium low heat. We don't want this to be scorching hot because as I say, the garlic can burn if you cook it too high too quickly. We want to just kind of bring out those natural aromas rather than cook it down too much, basically. So low or medium low heat, and then use a kind of neutral oil. So I kind of use sunflower oil a lot of the time. So a little dash of that in there to help cook those ingredients. And then, once that is kind of up to temperature, we will cook it, as I say, fairly slowly. We don't need to sort of rush through it or anything like that. We just want to kind of take that raw edge away, basically, before we add it into to the sauce. So I will grab a little spatula to cook it with. This is a slightly new hob as well, so haven't kind of quite got the heat gauge right with it yet. So we'll wait and see. I'll try not to burn it on the live stream. That wouldn't be ideal. But while that's coming up to temperature, we can turn our attention to our vegetables. So we have the asparagus and broccoli here. Typically, what you do with these, you could boil them or steam them, perhaps. I personally am just going to kind of use the same pan that we've got here because they can take on a really nice kind of charred flavour if you do them in the pan. So that's going to be what I'm going to do today. Again, saves on a bit of washing up, but if you wanted to steam or boil these, that's absolutely fine. Very little we have to do to prep these, particularly if you're using the fine asparagus like I've got here. So you can see they're very kind of thin stems. If you get the thicker ones, sometimes you may want to take the ends off of those, but for these you don't need to take very much off at all. What I am going to do is just chop the very ends off. So hopefully you can see there that they're a little bit woody, those stems. So we can clear some space on the chopping board. You want to just make sure all those ends are kind of lined up, and then again, don't need to take off loads here. We don't want to kind of waste stuff that's perfectly good to eat, but just those really woody stems, you can take those off, and that's no problem. Exactly the same process with the tender stem broccoli. With this one, the only thing that I'd say you might want to do is for some of these sort of, thicker stems. So you can see there, that one's, got a little bit of a thicker stem than that one, say. You might want to split these in half. So by that, I literally just mean, lengthways, chop down the middle, just so that they're all sort of roughly the same size. That's pretty much all you need to do. And again, not all of them will need you to do that. So just make a judgment call. And again, all we want to do is just chop the particularly woody ends of those off. So that pan looks like it is starting to come up to heat, hopefully. I'm going to add that in, add the chili, kind of garlic and ginger in. I might have been a bit premature there. I'm not hearing much of a sizzle, but hopefully that can come up while we're waiting. As I say, that's not a problem if you don't necessarily hear a sizzle. We want to sort of, cook this a bit slower rather than sort of flash fry it and risk burning it. So just incorporate that with the oil. Wait for it to come up to heat and keep an eye on it, basically. You want it to start becoming fragrant without kind of taking it too far. So I'll use my my nose and sense of smell to help monitor that one as much as my eyes. Always important in the kitchen, use all the assets that you have available, and things like, you know, listening and smelling, as well as kind of seeing what you're cooking, is really helpful. You know, knowing when things are done, or, you know, if things are about to burn. So make sure you keep paying attention. That's why I had the coffee at the start. You see, it all ties together. Got to be alert. So with these broccoli stems, I think there's a couple that I'm just gonna slice in half lengthways. If you wanted to, you could even go again to do kind of, you know, quarters, like this one. This one's got a particularly sort of woody stem, so just chop that down even further. And again, it's up to you really. If you kind of like, you know, a bit thicker, a bit more crunchy, that's fine. For me, again, I kind of want to cook it at a similar sort of rate to the asparagus. So for some of these, you know, woodier stems of broccoli, I'm just going to kind of slice them in half lengthways. You noticed as well that I chopped all the ends off, the woody ends, again, exactly the same as with the asparagus. Just want to get rid of the kind of nasty parts that have been exposed to the air. So that is very slowly starting to come up to heat. Again, we'll just keep an eye on that. Already starting to smell those lovely kind of aromas that are coming through. So I will just monitor that one. And the veg there, again, is pretty much prepped, to be honest. Not an awful lot more we need to do on that front. I've given these a wash beforehand, so not, you know, nothing to worry about there. Yeah, I think that's everything there. What we're going to do when the garlic and the chili and stuff come up to heat is we're going to do something called deglazing the pan. So this is a kind of technique that's used a lot in restaurants. So if you have steak, you may use kind of, you know, wine or stock to sort of lift the bottom of the pan. Basically, there's a lot of flavor when you cook stuff and it catches on the bottom. You can lift off just by adding liquid to a hot pan. If you've ever, you know, put a pan on the heat and added pasta water, you will know it instantly sizzles. And if you use that correctly, you can use that to lift off the flavor on the bottom of the pan. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here today. You can hear, hopefully, maybe I need to move the mic a bit closer, but you can hear the garlic, chili and ginger coming up to heat, which is perfect. They're starting to become nice and fragrant now as well, which is absolutely mega, and, you know, absolutely what we want. So again, just going to keep an eye on those. And then the kind of deglazing element, if you like, comes with the soy sauce. So the soy is going to hit the hot pan and basically lift anything that's caught on there. So if it's a garlic or ginger that have sort of stuck to the pan, it's just going to be lifted off with this. And it also helps to sort of reduce that sauce as well. So it's a really effective technique. I use it a lot when doing things with pasta. So there's a really nice kind of mushroom pasta recipe that I do where I chop the mushrooms up. They kind of fry on the pan, dry fry without any oil, and leave lots of little sort of caramelized bits, and then use some of the pasta water or a bit of white wine or something to deglaze the pan, lift that off, and then that kind of becomes the sauce almost. It's a really nice way of cooking and making sure you're kind of getting the most out of those flavors. So that is smelling absolutely wonderful. For 3 such cheap, simple ingredients, the smell you get when cooking those is just amazing. The pan, you can hear now, is coming up to temperature. Again, if I stand a bit closer, you can hear it on the mic. So we are now going to deglaze with our soy sauce. So again, you need to let the pan come up to temperature in order for this to work. In terms of how much to add, I would say, again, depends on how much sauce you want. If you want extra, obviously add more. I'm probably going to add, how much is in this? I usually kind of just eyeball it, but 150 ml. So I'm probably going to add most of this, I think. So I'll get nice and close, and hopefully you can hear the difference in sound. So you can hear that's kind of frying now. I'm going to add the soy in. And you hear the sound change from that kind of fry to more of a sort of, you know, the less of the sizzle and more, I guess, kind of boiling. It's more of like a gentle simmer, basically. And again, that is the liquid, obviously, sort of reducing the heat of the pan and coming up to the boil. I will take this off the heat briefly just so I can show you the kind of bubbles that are coming up. The bubbles, when it comes to cooking soy sauce, are a really, really good indicator of you know, how thick it is, basically. So you'll start off with the bubbles quite low, very, very kind of gentle. Simmer. When they start to get larger, you know that the sauce is kind of reduced a little bit more. It's a bit more thick, a bit more syrupy. That's kind of what we're going to be going for today. So again, I'll just make sure I keep an eye on that. The other flavors that we're going to add in there, as I mentioned earlier, are sesame oil. This is really, really strong, so you do not need a lot of this to add in there. So I very rarely use more than a teaspoon or two in kind of anything that I use it with. So again, less is more here, just a kind of small drop of that. And that, again, will just give it a nice sort of background flavor. You almost won't necessarily know it's there, but the dish is all the better for it. The hob seems to be dying on me slightly, but we'll persevere. The next thing we're going to add is honey, which is, I think, good for two things. Firstly, it helps to thicken the sauce. So, keep saying it's this idea of getting this glaze or, like a sort of thick marinade for the salmon, which is what we're after. And also it helps because the kind of sugar in it helps to caramelize the sauce, so you get a slightly different flavor. It's not just sweet; it's almost like a sort of burnt sugar flavor. So you could use white sugar, brown sugar as part of this. I personally kind of like adding honey. It's a very easy thing to sort of measure out. So particularly if you get it in this squeezy bottle. So again, just maybe tablespoon or so. I'm going to add in a little bit more soy sauce. It's a deceptively slow pour in this bottle. Want to make sure we've got all of that lovely flavor available. And again, I'm going to try not to touch that too much. So we've got our soy, our sesame, our honey in there. Lovely flavors coming together. Ginger, garlic, and chili as well, again, giving that nice background note. The one sort of element, I guess, that's missing is that acidity, that sharpness to sort of help cut through it, which is where we're going to use these limes. So if I can find a little bit of space on the board, we're going to roll the limes first, which you may have seen people do already. It just helps to kind of get the absolute max, sort of most juice out of them, basically. So give them a good roll. And you'll notice when it's inside, there's lots of tiny little cells, almost little pockets of lime. So we're helping to sort of burst those, massage those to make it easier to juice. The other thing that I mentioned at the start is about using the zest as well as the juice to kind of maximize flavor. A lot of people won't do this and will leave it on. Personally, I think that's a real crime. There's like almost free flavor that's coating the outside of that lime. This, unfortunately, you can't do with a knife. You do need a grater like this, or even a sort of box grater would work fine. But you just want to kind of give it a couple of quick strokes on the outside, and you'll see we're just taking off that like outer layer of lime. We don't want to go too far in and take off some of that white pith. It can be very bitty, like sort of stringy in your mouth and also quite bitter. So again, rather than going constantly on one place, you'll notice I'm kind of turning around this lime all the time. Smelling absolutely wonderful over there. Those lovely kind of syrupy, thick flavors coming through. So we've got the lime zest there, and again, we're now going to use the lime juice as well. So I always, or almost always, add both of them in. So the zest is going in there. The zest is almost kind of floral in comparison to the juice. The juice is obviously quite sharp, quite acidic, and the zest kind of is still limey, but gives a slightly different characteristic. So we will add those in. And I'm not going to add all of the lime juice. I've added half in there and a little squeeze from the other half. The main thing with a sauce like this is that you want to kind of taste and adjust. So it's all about balance of flavors, as I said at the start. And with this, you want to taste it, adjust it to your liking. So, you know, we've got a lot of sort of garlic and chili and ginger in there. That's soy, obviously. Sesame, again, I'm going to leave. I might just add a touch more honey because, again, I'm doing this obviously for 4 people, so I want to make a little bit more of that sauce. And I've got another lime there that you can use to sort of serve it with, but also to add a little bit more into the sauce if you need. So that is looking pretty good. The sauce is hopefully going to kind of thicken and reduce. We're going to be able to like coat the salmon with it. I'm just going to take my mic off briefly just to move that to another pan, just because it's taking a little while to cook. So bear with me, and I will be back very, very shortly. If you do have any questions or anything like that, please do let us know. If I can get the mic off. There you go. Cool. Give us a little bit more light as well. So it is smelling absolutely delicious, but it's just taking a little longer to come up to temperature than I thought. So I'm just going to move that sauce into this pan, but you can already see, well, hopefully you can already see that it's kind of gone a lot thicker and a lot more sort of syrupy than just the ingredients on their own. So that's exactly what we want. We want it to thicken up and, as I say, go like a glaze, basically. So I'm just going to transfer that. Again, if it does take a little longer to cook, obviously give it that time. Last thing you want is a sort of runny sauce to go over the top. You want to sort of almost spoon it over the salmon and the veg. I'm going to let that pan come back up to heat because that's what we're going to do our veg and our salmon in. The thing I would say, excuse me, about the veg and the salmon is that, again, you want it on quite a high heat. So it's important to let that pan come back up to temperature. That's where you get the nice kind of char scorch lines, really. So the other thing as well that I've not yet touched on is the rice. So I have, for this evening, done mine in a rice cooker. I would 100% recommend doing that if you have one. It is, I think, certainly how a lot of people in China and Japan and parts of Asia cook it. It's a kind of very popular method of doing it there. For me, it just comes out better. It's a much more consistent way of doing it. You know, the rice cooker as well is really good for slow cooks and things like that. So yeah, I would really recommend doing that if you have one. If you want to kind of go out and buy it, I would definitely recommend doing so as well. I think you can get them fairly cheaply now, and it will last a long time, and it's my kind of go-to way to do rice. If you don't have that and you don't want to kind of splash out, again, not a problem. You can simply fill a kind of saucepan, large saucepan, with boiling water. So a lot more, again, this is my kind of personal method of doing rice. There's lots of different ones that involve like tea towels and all sorts. Yeah, you can fill a large saucepan with boiling water and lots of salt. A portion of rice, I think they say it's about 80 grams. I personally like to do 100 because I'm greedy, but yeah, about 100 grams of rice. The main thing to bear in mind when doing it is to rinse it a lot beforehand. So several times, you know, if you have it in a sieve, you can run it under water, or you can put it in a bowl, fill the bowl with water and just kind of wriggle it about. You'll notice that a lot of the starch comes off, and that helps to avoid it sort of clumping together. So I would definitely recommend rinsing it 2, 3, 4 times to get as much of that starch off as possible. Yeah, once you do that, you'll be able to kind of avoid that sort of congealing effect that is really nasty with rice, and hopefully they stay kind of separate grains. So rinse it, then into a large pan, salted water, cook according to the packet instructions. It's usually about kind of 9 or 10 minutes or so. Then you want to drain it in a sieve, and you can run kind of cold water or boiling water over the top of it, again, just to kind of remove some of that starch. And then you want to serve it kind of quickly. The more longer you leave it to sit, the more it will kind of clump together and get nasty. So serve it quickly after you've done it, and yeah, it will then hopefully come out okay. As I say, the way that I usually do it to get it perfect every time is to use a rice cooker, but that would be what you'd do if you were using that. So I mentioned about the kind of bubbles that are happening with this sauce. They start off quite thin, and then as the sauce reduces, you get these kind of nice, thick, unctuous bubbles that kind of let you know that it's nearly there, basically. I'm a little bit worried that this pan is not going to get up to the right temperature, so I might have to cook the salmon on the stove potentially, but I will talk you through the setup there. What we want to do, again, very, very simple with the salmon, is just to kind of take it out, pretty much leave it as is. Some people, the skins are off these ones. I thought these were skin-on salmon. Anyway, not a problem. If the skin's on, personally, I prefer the skin to be on the salmon. You can get a really nice effect. The one thing I'd say, again, with these ones, it matters less because the cook time's kind of different. I would say if you are cooking with the skin on, to cook skin side down for about 10, maybe not that long, kind of, 4 or 5 minutes, and then just another kind of quick minute or two on the other side to kind of get it through. You want to cook it majority on the skin side. It helps to render out the fat that's in the skin, but also it kind of protects the salmon. It keeps it nice and succulent rather than aggressive cooking, which is on the other side. It's kind of a protective layer almost. With these ones, it doesn't matter so much. Obviously, there's not that protective layer, so you can just cook it kind of on all sides. The sauce is looking pretty good. This other pan, I think I might have to give up on. So I'm going to transfer that over to the stove. Again, we've got the beauty of live cooking. So unfortunately, you won't be able to see that, but I'll try and bring the pan over every now and then to show you. Again, that sauce is bubbling away nicely. It's gone really kind of thick, which is absolutely what we want. You can, if it's kind of too strong, too intense, let it down with a little bit of kind of neutral oil or even some water. So I might just do that to kind of thin it out a little bit, because it can be very, very intense when you've got, soy and a lot of those other sort of big flavors there. So again, I'm just going to add that. Hopefully back on that low heat, it will again kind of thicken up and go kind of glossy, but without being too strong. With the pan, I've got the pan on the stove on a kind of medium-high heat, because salmon doesn't take very long to cook. The worst thing you can do is overcook it. It goes really hard and rubbery. So we want to cook this probably 5 minutes in total. And it's okay if it's kind of slightly pink in the middle as well. Again, it's personal preference. Some people won't like that. For me, I personally prefer it to be a little bit more succulent. All that we want to do is just add a touch of oil to the outside. Again, it's sort of similar to how you'd cook a steak, really. Personally, I prefer to kind of oil the fish or the steak rather than oil the pan, just because it kind of almost acts as a natural sort of separating layer, basically. Yeah, once you've oiled that, and the pan's up to heat. Again, sorry you can't see it. I will do my best to describe it with words, but you want to put that in the pan. You should hear a sizzle with that one. Unlike with the garlic and ginger, you want to hear a nice kind of sizzle. And again, cook that. If you're doing it with skin, cook that skin side down for sort of 3 to 4 minutes, and then flip it for the last minute or so. Just make sure it's kind of cooked through evenly. I will now go and do that off camera. So hopefully you can hear that that sizzle. And what you'll notice as well is that it may kind of stick in the first part of cooking, stick to the bottom of the pan. It will naturally release itself once it's got a nice kind of crisp outside as well. So the other thing, again, I mentioned this was going to be a one-pan dinner. I'm going to do 2 portions now just to start off. I am going to add these vegetables in at the same time as the salmon. They don't take very long to cook. Similarly to the salmon, they only take a few minutes. So broccoli and asparagus are going to go into the other part of the pan. So just to give you a kind of visual representation, that's what the pan's looking like now. The 2 salmon fillets and the broccoli and asparagus there. Medium-high heat going on. And you just want to sort of keep an eye on that, really. Make sure that you're sort of turning the veg every so often. Again, the salmon is a little bit more forgiving. It will sort of tell you when it's free. So again, the sauce is just starting to bubble up nicely, which is absolutely perfect. Make sure we've got a nice sort of generous helping of our veg. Again, apologies you're not able to see this, but just have to take my word that it's smelling good at least. So this is kind of the easy part now, really. We've got the food cooking. Again, we've done all of our kind of hard work in terms of prep with the ingredients up to this point. So it will now hopefully just be a case of having a quick sort of clean down. And again, just watching that sauce. I'm going to turn that up slightly, and we will spoon that over at the end. You can, if you want to, use that as a marinade for the salmon. I personally kind of think it's a little bit easier just to do them separately. In this instance, you can do it as marinade if you want to. Yeah, kind of separately is fine. It's quite a strong sauce. A lot of those flavors that we're talking about are very, punchy flavors: soy, garlic, ginger, chili. So just kind of spooned on top is really nice. But you want to make sure that it's the right consistency, basically, to sort of syrupy, slightly glossy, rather than anything else. So again, what hopefully you'll be able to see with the camera is that salmon is sort of cooked halfway. It's almost like a sort of visual indicator of how far it is. So you can see it's gone still kind of pink on top and raw, but that bit on the bottom is coming up to temperature and changing color slightly. So that is almost like a sort of visual indicator of how cooked the salmon is. What you can do as well, if you want a more kind of gentle cook, and it's what I might do now, is just pop a lid on top of the pan. What that will do is it will trap any steam that's coming off. So any moisture from the vegetables and the salmon will kind of almost form its own internal oven. So the steam will rise, get trapped on top, and kind of, build up heat within it. So it will help to sort of cook the middle of the vegetables and the salmon rather than just like a fry, which is obviously kind of more aggressive heat on the outside. It will help to sort of cook those through a little bit more, and again, just speeds it up. You don't want to do that for ages. If you do that for ages, it will go wet and soggy, and obviously that's not really what we're after. Yeah, hopefully it will help to sort of speed up that process a little bit without necessarily compromising too much on that nice kind of crispy element that you've got as well. So I am going to grab a plate ready to serve up. I'm going to grab my rice as well. I'm just off camera trying to wrestle with the rice cooker to bring that over so you can see. Hopefully you can see from the camera why I'd recommend that we all use rice cookers. It's lovely and kind of flaky. You can see there's no sort of big clumps of rice. If you give it a little mix, they're all individual grains, which is really, really nice. So would reiterate the love for the rice cooker. And if you haven't got one, would recommend getting one. We take a look at our salmon and our veg now. That is nearly done. So a lovely smell coming through. And you can, again, hopefully you can see that the salmon's sort of changing colour slightly. It's sort of pink and, you know, more raw on the top, and then on the bottom side is more cooked through. And again, those veg are starting to take on some of that lovely colour. The benefit that you get from frying them rather than steaming them is they get some of that nice colour. So that won't take very long at all. I'm just going to flip the salmon to help it sort of cook through. This is the other downside of using fillets without skin, is that it kind of is a little bit easier. It kind of keeps it all together when you've got a bit of skin. When they're fillets, they can sort of break up a little bit. So yeah, would recommend using skin, but we adapt, we overcome, so not a problem. I'm just doing kind of one portion, a couple of portions rather, to start off with. I will cook the rest of these off camera. And yeah, do a lucky dip on my family to see who gets there first. But yeah, that sauce is now pretty perfect. We'll turn that off the heat, and I'll show you hopefully what I mean by a bit more of that sort of syrupy consistency. So you can see there, it's sort of beginning to coat the spoon, coat the back of the spoon with that. I might just give that another minute or two, just to finish thickening up. But we are kind of very nearly ready for service. So if I grab my plate, all we're going to do is put a nice sort of big mound of the rice down. In fact, I will do that in a moment when we're closer to being done. Again, I'm just going to move that off that stove and finish it off on the hob over here to reduce it a little bit quicker. We've got a bit of a dodgy oven at the moment, so that clicking noise is becoming the bane of our lives. But we've got the salmon just starting to kind of crisp up on the outside and go nice and pink in the middle, which is kind of my preference for how to cook it. If you go too far the other way, then it can, as I say, just go a little bit rubbery. It's like when you cook meat, basically. You don't want to kind of overcook it too much. So we are very nearly there now, just getting to the final stages, and hoping the equipment doesn't fail me. Oh, the clicking noise is just doing my head in. So the veg, just that kind of 30 seconds with the lid on has been really beneficial in terms of cooking that through, but you don't lose any of that kind of nice brown color. Hopefully you can see that there. The salmon is starting to fall apart, but again, that's a good sign that it's tender. And that sauce just looks to be kind of getting to that perfect syrupy consistency. So I think we are good to plate up at long last. I promise you this is a much quicker meal when you don't have someone like me rambling on the whole time. So we're going to start by putting a nice big sort of mound of our rice in the middle. And then presentation-wise, I personally like to go kind of salmon one side, greens another side, and then sauce over the top of both. So if I grab that pan of salmon and bring it over here. We'll hopefully be able to do that. We've got that lovely veg there. And then the salmon that's hopefully going to stay as one piece. Looks that way. Again, much easier with the skin because it kind of acts as a bit of a natural barrier. And also, if you are doing it without, you can use some of these lovely sort of crispy bits on the bottom here. And then again, just a nice kind of generous amount of your veg. So making sure you've got a good amount of broccoli and asparagus going over the top there. I'm just going to plate up one portion for now. So salmon and broccoli. And then last but certainly not least is our lovely sort of sauce slash glaze, which I'm just going to use the teaspoon for. And then here, you just want to try and make sure, get a little bit over the top of the salmon like that lovely dark color. And it kind of stains the rice slightly as well, which is really good. So again, just a little bit of that. It's almost like, I guess, a kind of salad dressing almost, if this was a salad. So a little bit of that over the top. And if you want to be extra chefy about it, you could add some coriander or chili or things like that. Again, we're just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to add a couple of sesame seeds on top just to help it kind of pop in terms of the visual appearance. So again, this part is entirely optional, but I'm just feeling fancy tonight, so I'm going to add a few of those on. If the lid's open, that is. So there you go. Equipment aside, that will still taste absolutely lovely. So that is the kind of salmon teriyaki dish. I will hold it up to the camera so hopefully you can see there. Salmon, lovely, kind of perfectly cooked through, slightly pink in the middle for me. That's how I like it. Again, leave it a little bit longer if not. That sauce glaze over the top that goes on the vegetables and the rice, everything like that will be absolutely delicious, kind of brings it all together. You know, feel free to take it different ways. If you want to kind of add a few things into the sauce, then by all means would recommend doing that. If you want to do this with chicken rather than salmon or tofu even, you know, really, really good options. And again, you can swap the veg out as well. So really kind of customizable dish, but hopefully some kind of principles there that will be helpful for cooking it in the future. So if you have cooked along with us, please do send in your kind of recreations. On Instagram would be a really good place. So at HeartsSU would be really good, or to myself at O2 Cooks and Eats. And then, yeah, it would be really nice to see your kind of recreations if you have done those. But for now, that is my teriyaki salmon for Hearts SU. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you're able to kind of cook that in Freshers Week or, you know, through uni and upgrade slightly on the usual sort of pot noodles. So, yeah, that's it from me, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.